That'll work. So thanks everyone for joining us today. I was saying to Miles and Paul before I let everybody in that this is probably one of the top three hot topics that I've seen in team regional meetings in 2025. I've obviously done probably 5,000 miles in total, traveling all over the UK, meeting literally hundreds and hundreds of members. And I think actually when Miles was talking up in the Northeast, there was a few recruiters actually in the room that just said, I'm so sick to death of working for free. And all those little things that I do for my clients, just not getting paid for them. So it's so pertinent that we've got NorthStar people doing this webinar now. I should have got you, Mars, to do all of the entries coming in whilst I was doing this intro, but really, really pleased for it. It's going to be a solid 45 minutes, give or take, of presentation. And then there'll be a Q&A at the end as well. So if you've got any questions that you want to say to the end, that's fine. I'm going to stay in the meeting and monitor the chat for you all. So if you've got a question on a topic that Miles or Paul are talking about immediately, put that straight in the chat and I will interrupt them as politely as I possibly can and get them to answer that question for you now. Make sure you got a pad and paper to get your notes down right now. But obviously we will send a copy of this video out afterwards with some extra bits for you. But yeah, the floor is yours both. Really looking forward to this session.
Cool, great. Thank you for the introduction, Andy, and thank you for you continuing to admit people as they drip feed in to the session today. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I know Fridays sometimes isn't an easy time to make time for people, particularly when the weather's so beautiful and you probably want to be outdoors having a beer rather than sat here listening to us. So we'll make sure today is really impactful and you get some really good positives out of today. It's a bit of a game of two halves. So we've got a lot to go through. We're sharing a lot of information on slides today simply because this is being recorded. So we wanted it more than just the narrative, because there's people that wanted to be here today, can't be here today. And we want them to feel the impact of what we've got to talk about, as well as your good selves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick intro. Just give me a couple of minutes to talk about NorthStar people. No big plug, but I just want to talk about who we are as a team, what we're about as a business. And then I'm going to leave you in Paul's capable hands for the first part of today's session. He's got some amazing insights to go into. So just a little bit about us for those of you who aren't familiar with NorthStar people. We're an organization with 5 people who are just passionate about the recruitment industry. And actually, our real passion is about getting this industry to be seen for what we feel it deserves, the recognition it deserves in terms of providing amazing professional services to organizations and amazing support to candidates in terms of their career development and progression. We get very frustrated by the way that, unfortunately, our industry seems to sort of be pushed down, shall we say, a little bit, and doesn't have the best reputation. And I know there's some brilliant people in team that absolutely are the opposite, polar opposite of that, and I think that's why, the opportunity to talk today to you all about how you can elevate yourselves and your value proposition out of the gutter that is contingent recruitment into some really cool sort of sexy stuff. So team of 5 people in NorthStar. We're very, very commercial leaning as an organization. Many of you are familiar with me. We go back some time, and also Paul's obviously been in and around team with me now for a couple of years. But Catherine on the marketing side, as well as Andrea and James on the learning and development side. Between us, I hate to admit it, but we've got sort of north of 150 years worth of recruitment industry experience between us. There's a lot of passion there and a lot we love to share. But I'm going to hand over to Paul now, because he's got some amazing things to share and some insights for you for today.
Thanks, Miles. When you mentioned the 150 years, I could see a few people's eyebrows just raise. I can second guess what they were thinking, that 100 of those were from you and 50 from the rest of the team, and they would be absolutely right in thinking that. Anyway, so cracking on. So just a little bit of, I guess, of context before we get into the future. I just want to spend a little bit of time just looking at what we've got here and now, because I think sometimes as recruiters, and I've definitely been guilty of this, by the way, we can see a shiny new product or get all excited, we go running off, and we don't really understand why we've started doing it and how we're going to measure it to make sure that what we're doing is actually generating a return on investment. So we are just going to spend a little bit of time just taking a step back initially. The last thing I just want to add, um, when I was a recruiter, which wasn't too long ago, by the way, I used to sometimes come on these webinars, and I'm going to have to admit this. This is the first time I've admitted it, by the way. I was perhaps a little bit arrogant and thought that I probably knew as much as the speakers. So I've definitely been guilty of that. All I'll say to you is that I've definitely been there, done it fairly recently, the whole life cycle of developing solutions. And I still do a little bit of work for clients direct. So I've done two quite big outsourced solution deals for organizations in the last 3 years. That's really useful because it gives me insight in terms of what's going on in organizations, what they look for, why they use agencies, why they don't use agencies, how they're building internal business case, change transformation program, etc., etc. So I'm going to try and use some of that throughout this session with you, if and where I can. I start off with this slide for one reason. This is the vast majority of how your customers perceive agencies. Not all, I'd say the vast majority. They genuinely feel that recruiters are all the same. They genuinely feel that we're all trying to achieve the same thing and we're all competing with one another. Do we disagree? Do we agree? Open to interpretation. My perspective, I think recruiters are very similar. Some of the questions that Miles and I ask when we start working with organizations is just, what have you got anything that's different? What are you doing that's sort of standing out from the norm? And people will say, yeah, I'm in a niche market. And we go, yeah, we haven't heard that one before. And they'll go, well, I've got some great people in my business. And we go, yeah, we haven't heard that one before. So, this bit about standing out is really hard. And the last thing I'm just going to say is, we've proof and evidence that whatever we talk about today is applicable to solo entrepreneurs and bigger businesses in that SME category. So this is not just for somebody with 20, 30, 40, 50 heads. I've done this piece of work with a couple of solo entrepreneurs. So moving forward, Miles, I guess the big question is, what do we do? And I think you've got two choices. We do nothing, but then don't whinge if anybody's saying that it's getting hard and it's the same as what last year was about and all the rest of it. But doing nothing is an option. And if you're doing particularly well, you might not need to do anything. But if you want to do something different, we need to try and change what we're doing and what we're offering. Thanks, Miles. And this is all about trying to stand out from the crowd. I just need to thank Andy Dunn, by the way, because I didn't think he would dress up as a big bird when he entered that bike race. But he's a good sport, is the lad. So thank you very much for
I'm
doing
saving it for the marathon next year as well. Looking forward to it.
So this standing out is really super important. At the moment, a lot of organizations, customers, they don't believe agencies do anything different. And I think it's fair comment in most cases. Thanks, Miles. So what we need to start to think about is just, what does the service, what are the options around the services that we could provide? And how do we move away from something that is very low complexity and low customer value? This is just my personal view, by the way. I did have quite a heated debate with a well-known figure in the industry. He thought contingent recruitment was brilliant and it was going to be around forever. And he may be right, by the way. But I've got a slightly different view. I think permanent recruitment and perm contingent recruitment has had its day. And I think if you fast forward over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think we'll be looking back going, Paul was probably right. Hopefully I was probably right anyway. So it's all about how we can try and add more value to customers, which typically involves more complexity about the service, but it increases the value. The one thing that all those services in that bracket generate is recurring revenue. So this is one of the ways in which you can generate recurring revenue for your business. It'll give you 2 to 3 year contracts. You will start to have higher level conversations with more C-level people in your business. It's an absolute game changer. And I have just seen somebody enter the room who will verify this, by the way, because they've just started doing this recently as well.
Well,
So
thanks for that.
you're right, Gary?
Good, mate.
So this is all about trying to understand where we're trying to take the business and what is it we're trying to fix in your organization, in your recruitment business, and how it's going to add value to the customer. But contingent perm recruitment is probably the easiest thing to do. It's probably one of the most stressful services you can deliver because you don't know whether you've got a placement next Monday or the Monday after. And if you have got a placement, you don't know what's coming after that. It's really that feast and famine is absolutely spot on when it describes that recruitment offering. So it's trying to think outside the box a little bit. Now, just before I move on, I'm not talking RPO in a Corn Ferry Alexander Mann way. I'm talking about RPO solutions, things that are bespoke to your customer, ways that you can truly add value because it's fixing a problem. And that may not necessarily be an RPO solution. When sometimes I mention the word RPO, people go, "Oh, I'm not a Corn Ferry or Alexander Mann." I've known people do RPO solutions with 6 heads in the business and get 3 year deal generating £250,000 a year. So this can apply to anybody. Thanks, Miles. So the question that I always ask is where do we start? And I mentioned at the start, I think it's about understanding why we might wish to consider adapting the services that we've got and understanding how we measure it. Cheers, Miles. The first bit of data I want to share is what a typical recruitment business in the UK looks like. So we start off with 100% of our GP or net fee income. We spend around 40% on people. By the way, when I started out in recruitment, that was always around a third, so that's gone up. So we're spending 40% on people costs, around 36% on other costs, 4% on LinkedIn, 2% on job boards, which means that we're left with 18p in the pound. Now, usually that's before any dividends have been taken out and your corporation tax. So take those two things out as well, and you're left with single-digit numbers. So the profitability of what we're doing in the recruitment industry is getting harder and harder. By the way, if you haven't been contacted by LinkedIn, I know a number of my customers have been contacted about price increases, so that 4% might be going up next year. So we've been squeezed on the profit side. So one of the questions we need to ask is, are we happy with 18%? If you are, don't need to do anything. If you want to double that, if you want to more than double it, then you've got to start thinking about the different services that you can offer your customers. Cheers, Miles. And I think that 18% that we generate from a profit perspective is severely impacted and driven by a few levers. The big one is the amount of revenue that we're getting per head. Now, for those of you that have been in the industry a long time, 120k, 10k a month, that's been around for as long as I can remember. It's not shifted. So if you want to be just average, bill 120 grand per head per year. If you want to be better than average, if you want to be upper quartile, you need to be in that second data set there. So one of the challenges that I always ask of people is just, where do you want to be? Do you want to be average, or do you want to be knocking it out of the park? If you want to be knocking it out of the park in your business, the average gross margin net fee income per head needs to be north of 170k. So that's data point number one. Thanks, Miles. One of the reasons I passionately believe that has been affected is because I don't think we train people particularly well in a lot of cases. We tend to do it top down. So the business owner will go, you know what, we need to do some business development training today. And then they'll set about doing some business development training. 2 or 3 weeks time, they're, oh, we need to do some overcoming CV objections. So they do some training around that. I passionately believe that training should be a bottom-up exercise. We should be asking the team, the consultants, the owners, what assess yourself through a proper training needs analysis. This is like doing an MOT, But get your people, get your consultants to do this themselves. Get them to mark the homework, submit the form to you, and then you mark it, and then it becomes a really good conversation around what is it that you need specific training with, rather than doing it top down. It needs to be bottom up. By the way, I sent our training needs analysis to a company last week. They used it for the consultant, 6 people in the business. It went back to the director, and the director had to go back to 2 of the individuals because he thought they were eating mushrooms and smoking shit and everything else because they'd marked it so high. So that just goes to show the difference between the leadership and people at the coalface. Massive gap there. The last bit I'm going to add is this. If customer retention is so important, and by the way, it should be, why is only 10% of training focused on account management skills? I haven't got the answer, by the way, but how shocking that we spend 80 to 90% of the time doing BD training, but we don't do training on how to just maximize what you've got. When Miles will talk about productization, we have to start with our existing customer base because it's by far 70 to 80% easier to sell to an existing customer than a new one. So whatever you do from a solutions perspective, you're going to go talking to your customers in your own backyard. And yet from a training perspective, we spend a little time training on account management. Cheers, Miles. The next point is around customers. So if you're not measuring customer retention, you're one of 27% of business owners that don't do it. Not too sure why you would not measure customer retention, given it's so important. The average customer retention rate in the UK is 40%. If you want to be better than that, then you need to be north of 70% because that's where upper quartile performance is. So again, customer retention should be something that is absolutely paramount. It's not only customer retention, by the way, it can be cross-selling as well. So what are the services that you're selling into your customers, and are you selling everything possible that you possibly can? But customer retention is super, super important. Productization is a way that you can drive that customer retention rate from 40% to 60. And I've seen that done in the last 8 months with one particular agency. So it's a great way to drive customer retention. I'll just caveat, by the way, if you're a sort of headhunting business, then your customer retention rate might be a little bit higher. That's a trend that we sometimes see. And equally, if you're in a very niche market where you do one role every 2 or 3 years with a customer, it can be a little bit lower. But 40% is the average customer retention rate in the UK. Thanks, Miles. Couple of reasons why I think that is. I don't think sometimes we are particularly good at investing in account management skills and training, which I've shared with you just now. I spent 2 days at a conference with an agency talking about account management and getting in front of customers. Miles mentioned that sometimes we haven't got the reputation that we probably deserve. I think we're a victim of that ourselves. I think we created to some extent because we find it hard to get time with customers. And we find it hard to get time with customers primarily because they think we just want to sell to them. We don't want to add value. We're not providing a solution. And that's why we struggle to get time. So I'm not surprised or shocked by this stat. If you want to be, in the sort of slightly different pot, standing out, going back to Andy in his Big Bird outfit, you just need to get in front of your customers. But you're not going to get in front of your customers if all you're doing is talking about stuff that you've done or stuff you want going forward. I used to spend 20% of my time looking back and 80% of my time sharing thought leadership, insights, competitor analysis, things that were happening, things that were changing, the world of work. I would be talking about that. That's how I achieve high level conversations. I never ever struggled getting airtime with customers. Never. Because I wasn't trying to sell. It's a different mindset. Thanks, Miles. The last thing, and this is a real bugbear of mine at the moment. I've been banging on about this for a good year and a bit. I don't know if we've got 100 people on this webinar. 30% of you are earning money. The other 70% are doing work for bugger all, because we're only filling 30% of our roles that we work on, and that is having a material impact on the profitability of your business. That is one reason, by the way, why we're only making 18p in the pound. And Miles is going to be explaining this in more detail. So if you were ever, doubtful that doing something was maybe not something for you, the number at the end of this that Miles will share with you, I think will convince most people that now is the time to actually crack on and do something different. Don't know whether anybody's shocked by that or whether everybody knows that number already, but just bear that in mind. The reason why you have to charge 18% fees is to make up for the other 2/3 of work that you do and you don't get paid for it. The last bit I'm just going to add on, this is a great opportunity for you to stand out. Only 15% of business leaders have sat down with the customers in the last 2 years and shared and talked about innovation and built something different. So if you want to be in that big bird outfit, standing out from the crowd, being perceived to be somebody who's different to all the other recruiters out there, just get in front of your customers and innovate. Talk about solutions, services, what you can do differently, where they need help, what they need support with. What's going to happen when the TA person leaves or goes on holiday? Who's going to pick that work up? There's all sorts of conversations you can have other than, have you got an order? And the last slide I'm just going to end with is, if thinking about the things that I've talked about, if you retain 2 more customers per year, per person, this applies to sole entrepreneurs as well, you've got 1 consultant you drive from 120k to 140k through doing proper structured training, bottom up, not top down. You move your fill rate from 30% to 40% without even doing any of the stuff that Miles is going to talk about now. You can easily make 96 grand. But there is one obstacle, Miles. It's you. It's absolutely you. And I think I know why that tends to be the main obstacle in most cases. Is because we tend to sit in our comfort zone. We might dip a toe in the water in the fear zone, but the minute that we're affected in a good or bad way, we tend to go back to the comfort zone. We don't continue to push through. If you want to do something different, this is about pushing through that comfort zone. Over to you, Miles.
Cool. And there endeth the gospel according to St. Paul. No, thank you for that, Paul. That's really insightful. And hopefully what that's done is just got a few of you thinking, setting the scene a little bit, the reason for change and the purpose for change. So look, I'm going to try and get through my little bit now over the next sort of 20 minutes to allow us some sort of decent Q&A at the back end. So what I want to talk about now is bleeding on from the conversation we've had earlier, talking about the value of commitment, and importantly, how, and this is what I want to do, is give you some tools today about how you can remove these heavy chains of contingent recruitment from your business. Because for me, contingent recruitment will likely continue to play a part, but the challenge we've got is, if you're working with a client for more than 12 months and certainly more than 24 months, and you're still doing contingent recruitment, as Paul said earlier, something's sort of not working right. Why haven't we got them to a point where they're trusting us to invest in us and commit to us in a more meaningful way? And sometimes that's a two-way thing, in the same way that sort of commitment is. But look, here's some examples, because I want you to stay on the call. Now that you've heard Paul and you're thinking, well, that's the only reason why I dialed in, I don't want to listen to Miles. No, please stay on, because there's 3 examples here of businesses that Paul and I have both worked with together and also independently, because you can have one of us or both of us, it's up to you. Organizations that have achieved great things. We've got a client in South Manchester, 4 months ago, all contingent, working at 15-16%, really struggling, having to work 3 times harder than they've ever worked before, and not achieving what they were achieving 2 years ago. And they were very skeptical. But in the last 17 weeks, they've won 21 individual roles on a committed basis. It's not a retainer, on a committed basis. And what they get is they get a small proportion of the fee up front. That has equated to £42,000 worth of fees. That's really important for them. But the most important thing is the client is committed. The client is bought in. Every single one of those roles is still live. They're in the process of placing the majority of them. It feels like they're going to end up filling all of them. And the client is really, really sticky and really engaged in the process. So they've gone from 4 months ago thinking, this isn't going to work, to that. We've got another client in Manchester that does hospitality. They've had a subscription model going for some time. And within 6 months now, they've got 15% of their revenue within a recurring revenue subscription model. Again, previous to the work that had been done, it was all no placement, no fee, hand to mouth, having it turned on, having it turned off, clients changing their mind. And then the final one, solo guy, really, really wonderful, amazing guy up in the north of England. 30% of revenue is now monthly fee based through a fractional embedded model that was launched in January 25. And you're in the room and you know who you are. So well done on achieving such an amazing result. There you go. Look, thumbs up for those that have seen him. So stay on, because, this can be you and more and different and better. So look, what I want to talk about now, is very much around this commitment thing being a two-way thing. Because for me, we can't just expect clients to give us stuff if we ask for it. We've got to demonstrate, we've got to add value, we've got to get engaged with them in a more meaningful way. We've got to help them understand why the current way that they're going about doing a lot of their hiring isn't working and sort of needs to change. We need to have some frank conversations. We spend too much time being reactive, picking up jobs because somebody's left or whatever, and they have a go at filling them themselves. It doesn't work. They then hand it out to 2 or 3 agencies. And again, this isn't me talking the industry down at all, but in my own humble opinion and experience, it's our failure as an industry to get under the skin of our clients that leads us to being reactive recruiters. It's only the very few that go in and actually start trying to understand where the problems are, where the issues, where the challenges are for those businesses. Look, the first 3 are bloody obvious, but many of them, they have drivers because they need to reduce time to hire. They've got to get that cost per hire down. They want to see the quality of people improve and increase as well. Retention's another one, cultural issues. There's a myriad of things. So it's not just about, there's a requirement, let's go and put a bum on a seat. And I know a lot of you don't work in that way, but if we start to have more meaningful conversations around drivers and motivators, it starts to build those relationships because you're showing an interest in them. People buy for 2 reasons. One, because you're showing them something that they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. I need that. We want that. That's going to be transformational for us. So you drag them towards an opportunity. Many people, it's about taking them away from fear and pain. And what we should be is that antidote for that pain. We should be fixing their problems with them and for them. And quite often, what we all aspire to do is get into this top right-hand box of partnership recruiting. In many instances, sadly, we fall into the top left box. We're seen and perceived as a supplier. So we've got a goodish relationship, maybe with one person. But we're a supplier, we're one of many, and we've got a bit of knowledge and understanding around the business. Or again, and I can think of many examples going into businesses where, we're a bit of a friendly face. We've got an amazing relationship, but we've got an amazing relationship with John or with Jane because we've known them for years. And we failed to expand our knowledge and understanding of the customer. We're not talking to that many people, sometimes only just one. We're not maybe engaging in some of the senior leaders and having conversations with them. And we've all been in that situation, haven't we, where you're having the conversation, you're putting your sort of weekly check-in or your monthly call into your friendly face, and they turn around and say, I'm not able to work with you anymore. You've got to work through these guys because they've just been, and you're just like, what? Hang on. But we've got an amazing relationship. Because again, and we've all been there, haven't we, where it's our lack of depth of relationship and broadness of understanding means that we lose those opportunities sometimes. So for me, what we need to do is we need to lift ourselves away from being purely transactional. And look, don't get me wrong, it's nice to have something exclusive. for what that word's worth. It's nice to be on a PSL for what commitment that actually gives us. But the reality is there's not a lot there. Those can change at any time. And you know, exclusive is yeah, whatever. It doesn't count for anything in my book. We need to get into this partnership sort of space, and we need to develop those relationships. You know, we've got a really, really wonderful exercise that we do with clients. It's something that Paul created, which is amazing, is a way of segmenting clients based on the relationships that they've got and the understanding of the business and where it's going to and where it's at. It's quite sort of phenomenal. Not one for today, but make sure you're segmenting your customers properly on an annual basis. It will help you drive more quality services with the right clients, and will probably help you exit some of the dogs as well. So we can talk about that. But for me, we've got to add value. We've got to add expertise. We've got to add insights. You've got to take something to your client to get them sit up. You know, it's all right taking them pizzas and beer and whatever and having a nice chat, but the reality is, what quality are you bringing and you're adding as part of that journey? So let's just talk about adding more value.
There's a comment there, Miles, from
Cool.
Sam
Right.
Moore.
Go on.
She said that we tried offering additional services, such as offering probationary reviews and onboarding, where startups don't have HR, and they love the idea. But when they were approached by other agencies at a lower rate, they wanted to strip out the additional services as they perceive them as an extra cost that they didn't need.
Okay, look, that doesn't surprise me. What I would say is, well done for making that step and realizing there's an amazing opportunity to add more value in other areas. What I would say is, if that's opened the door like that with one client, even though they then backed away for their various reasons, that will also appeal to others. What I would add, and I'll talk about it in a little bit more detail later on, is whenever we're going to do something new and something different, we need to actually go to market. We need to talk to our customers, some of our prospects, and the warm and friendly people that we know in and around the industry, and find out what people want. But more important than that, what are the things that they like? What are the things that are really exciting for them? What are the things that might not be that appreciative of, but also as well, are they prepared to pay for it? And if so, how much and why? And if we don't do that testing as part of product development, quite often we can get slightly left or right of center, and it can fall over. But I'll with the slides I'm going to go into in a moment, it will answer some of that as well. Is that okay? So just talking about adding value beyond recruitment. And again, I'm just sharing some of the work and how we go about it with clients that we work with. If you're a recruiter and you're recruiting, you're doing that much. What you can do is look either side of what you currently do around strategy, around planning, around management. You can look at onboarding. There's loads and loads of extra services that you could potentially do, but I don't want you to get swamped with this. So it's a good idea to sometimes separate a process into buckets like this, and think about, what do we currently do at that discovery stage, at that engagement stage? What do we do around attraction and sourcing and selection? Anything we're currently doing around assessment, management, and completion of sort of projects. And as I said, we can take those circles either side of that as well if you want. But then think about, right, that's what we currently do. What could we do? What might be interesting and exciting? Because what we do with our clients is we build out what could be possible. So we've got a big mixed bag of services, products, features, benefits, things like that. But we need to make some sense of those things. And this is the process we go through. And I'm just sharing this because, you know, some of you might want to reach out to us and say, hey, NorthStar, come and help us, or I want a conversation for more details. Some of you, look, great, we want to do it for ourselves. That's cool as well, which is why I'm sharing it. But the way that we've been building for the last 18 months with clients, these product suites, it's not saying, here's one size fits all, here you go, but it's working with those agencies to understand what they currently do, think about what they might do, understand their customers, and start to build, as we've done here with an example on the right with a client with 4 product lines, is what can we offer now in terms of something with no commitment, aka contingent recruitment, where there might be some slight commitment and meaningful commitment, full commitment on a single project. It used to be called a retainer. But again, we've got to get away from this contingent or retained. It's bullshit. It doesn't work anymore. And the old fee models and structures are just broken. We've got to be more sort of progressive than that. But also as well, we've got to start thinking about where can we have products where it's going to reward clients based on giving us more volume over longer period, and that commitment comes accordingly. Subscription models. And Paul mentioned earlier, don't be scared by the word RPO, recruitment process outsourcing. You can be a micro agency, a small agency, and deliver successful RPO solutions and projects. It's about picking your battles and knowing how to go in there and actually achieve that success. And as I said earlier, also as well, we've got agencies doing, fractional embedded work, going in and charging themselves out and almost providing a TA service on behalf of a client. So those things are all there to be achieved. But look, here's the kicker, guys. Okay, in the old days, contingent recruitment used to cost that, and we gave that much service. And again, I'm going to apologize if there's any exec headhunters in the room, but on that flip side of the big retainers, the exec search, the senior appointments, you'd reel off this big long list of all these amazing things that and then justify a 33% charge or something like that. And you'd carve it up into 3 chunks, and that on sort of sign off, that on shortlist, and that on acceptance. And genuinely, I don't think that's working as well as it could do anymore. And where we're seeing massive success is turning it on its head and actually explaining to clients the challenge that we have of contingent recruitment. And actually, if you're prepared to give us more commitment, we will add more value and more quality in our service. But interestingly, we'll put the cost down for you. So the more you commit to us, the more you'll save. And that is one of the big drivers of clients at the moment. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one to get your head around. But the challenge is, guys, you've got to start having conversations with clients about waste. Explain to them why contingent recruitment sucks, not just for us, not just for the candidate, but for you, the employer, the end client. So let's talk about waste. Here's an example of somebody who's pretty successful at the moment, I would suggest. Average fee of 17.5%, 7K fee, average salary of 40,000, the roles they're placing, 28 placements a year, doing very nicely, thank you. We're very, very good in recruitment at celebrating success, ringing bells or whatever it is we do when we place a deal. What we're not very good at doing is looking at what happened before then, because we're too busy about, right, we've done a placement, let's move on to the next one. Busy. If we take time and step back and actually start thinking about, well, if we started to measure our success based on the number of roles that we work, it looks slightly different. So if we're filling 1 in 3, for this example, actually, it's not a $7,000 average fee at all. Average fee is actually less than $2,500. So all of a sudden, that successful person, are they being that successful? Could we actually get more out of them by being smarter and doing more things? Now, here's the real problem. When you actually measure and accelerate that up over the year, what's that person's waste? It's huge. That's the amount of money that's disappearing down the pan. And I'm not even measuring how much is being lost standard terms and how much they're being discounted by. But this is the problem we've got. I don't know any other industry where, we're celebrating an achievement level of 33.33%, where we've got 2/3 of our product falling off the end of the conveyor belt straight into the dustbin. It's nuts. And we've got to start having this conversation with clients and explaining that's why the fee needs to be high for contingent recruitment. Can I just go back to that example? One of the examples I gave earlier, the client in South Manchester that does technical sales, as a result of getting a committed recruitment product going, not only have they achieved 21 sort of clients signing up 21 vacancies with that upfront fee, 42 grand's worth of revenue. What they've also seen is their contingent percentage go from an average of just above 15% to 20%, because part of the premise of getting this right is making sure your contingent fee is suitably high and do not deviate from it. And that's probably the biggest challenge you've got at the moment, is being brave enough to not drop your pants anymore and compete on price. If all you're going to do is compete on price, carry on doing contingent and stay on the hamster wheel. But this is what this is about. Paul talked earlier about standing out. This is Andy in his big bird costume again. We've got to be different. Okay, you're not going to be totally different. You're not going to be unique, but let's find that sweet spot. Let's find that thing that we can do that most of our competitors aren't doing. And let's understand what these things are that are going to make clients sit up and get engaged and get interested. You know, we talked earlier about the process we go through. Okay, and this is an example again. I'm just sharing, and you'll have access to this recording, so you'll be able to see these slides at your sort of leisure. Well, what you've got there on the right hand side is a piece of market testing analysis that we do called Kano analysis. And what we've done with a client there, and that's a real example, is we've broken their product down around strategy, attraction, sourcing, selection, and onboarding. And we've put in a number of features and functionality. We've then gone to a number of clients, and each of those columns with all those different colors in is a different client. And we've asked the question, how would you feel about it if we did this? And how would you feel about it if we didn't do that? Very, very simple. But what that gives us on the right-hand side is a checkbox to say, in green, these are all the things that we have to include in our product and service. And this was an RPO solution, by the way. Where there's a little X in that green box, that's the stuff we're going to lead on, we're going to market on, because that's the stuff that they said, that's amazing, that's brilliant, when can I have it? You know, this is something that's going to be transformational for our organization. You know, those are the things we lead on. The things that came out in amber on the right-hand side are things where maybe there was a bit of a difference of opinion. Some clients liked it, some loved it, some weren't too sure, and some didn't particularly buy into it. So we sort of say, okay, we make those options. So we put those in optional cost, because if you build a product out with too many features, too much going on, it gets confusing, it gets difficult. You've got to get the right product for your customer. And as I said, this isn't a one off the shelf type of exercise. You know, we don't go around saying to clients, you want a permanent product suite, here you go, off you go, play with it. It doesn't work that way. You have to design it for your customer base. It's as simple as that. Stuff on the right-hand side, the red stuff that we thought we were being really smart about, congratulating ourselves, high-fiving. Hey, we've come up with something really great. 4 things there. Our client said, don't even come and talk to us about that. If you do, it's going to turn us off. So that stopped us going to market with a product that would have potentially, you know, fallen flat on its face, because there would have been things in it that we hadn't really understood properly from a client's perspective. So this Kano analysis is something that you need to be thinking about doing. We can help you with it, but look, just Google it if you want. You can even try and do it for yourselves. It's an interesting exercise, to be sure. But this is the process we go through, guys. This is what we do with our clients. And I would say you need to do the same. If you're going to do some of this stuff, you want to go and do it for yourselves, that's cool. But I would advocate that you follow a simple process. Do some discovery around your own product, review what you've got, and start to design and build your new one. Okay. Look at it, understand it, get some other people involved. If you're a solo and you're doing this for yourself, for God's sake, get other people you know and trust involved in the process to engage with you, and then take it to your clients as a virtual concept. One of the key things, though, is the sales enablement. If you haven't got, or if you're not comfortable or confident or equipped to go in and talk and do solution sales, you need some support and help. Okay, whether it's from us, you know, other people are available, or you know, somebody else, but you need to make sure that you understand how you're going in and going to talk about each of those features, each of those service line, because it's as you all know, it's about benefits, but more importantly than that, it's the advantages and the impact it's going to have. So we do a big piece of sales enablement over a full day before we do any launch to market, and the support and coaching is just something we offer as part of our sort of solution, really. So I just wanted to give you that, because you need to follow a process. Don't just, I'm going to scope out a product, I'm going to take it to market tomorrow. It will fall over. Do it well, do it right, and it will work, and it will fly. So look, I'm going to wrap up now, because I'm sure we've got some Q&A. So, you know, for me, what's the end game? Stronger, longer term partnership business. It's repeat business. It's getting involved. It's being seen as a go-to person. You're going to start, if you do good products and services beyond reactive contingent recruitment, you get seen as a partner. It's as simple as that. You'll see, you know, a much deeper understanding of culture and needs of the business, and you'll get higher quality placements as a result of that. client advocacy is going to go through the roof. You will get referrals, recommendations. It just happens. We've seen it time and time again. But the most important thing for you guys as recruiters, and I'm sure this will resonate with many of you now, you'll have a much more predictable pipeline. You'll have a bit of a competitive edge. It won't be unique, but you'll have a real competitive edge that isn't built around price and reducing your price. And you'll be able to fight your corner accordingly. What a delight to be able to have recurring revenue, to have a 6-month pipeline where you're not starting every month on a zero and having to build back again. That's what this is all about. But there's things you're going to need to do with your customers. Sharing insights. I talked about this earlier, but I'm just reinforcing it now. You need to be doing different things beyond just recruitment. If all you're going to do is just that recruitment piece, well, good luck to you, because I'm a little bit like Paul. I do feel with the technology that's happening now, that's coming down the line, I fear for people who build their business on purely contingent perm recruitment, because I tell you what, everything's looking like tech's going to come in and really chop away. And you've seen the pressure around internal TA, internal HR having to fill more themselves, doing the difficult roles themselves, not just giving them straight out to agencies, everybody chasing around for jobs because there's not as many as there used to be. It's getting desperate out there, and you've got to do something now to be different and get away from price. So this is what it's all about for me. We have to evolve. And I think any agency now that's embracing and thinking about changing their mindset from recruitment agency to talent solutions is going to have an opportunity, not just to survive on the hamster wheel of death, but thrive sort of going forward. Look, we're going to share these obviously after today, but if any of you have got your cameras handy and you're not connected with us already, grab a little screenshot, connect with us. Paul and myself will be happy to do any one-to-ones on this. If you want to DM us, either through Team or otherwise, that's absolutely cool. But we want you to grow, okay? And one little thing that might be of benefit for you just before I finish is this. We offer a free benchmarking service for businesses, recruitment businesses. So again, there's another code there, another QR code for you. So if you want to do a quick benchmarking exercise to look at some of your key metrics as a recruitment organization, where you stand against industry, where you stand against best in class, it's free. We'll give you a free feedback session as well around that, 40 minutes on Teams or whatever. I'd advocate you do that. You'll get a report regardless, either way. And that's me done. Andy, can I bring you back into the table, please? I know we've got a few minutes left, so if there's any questions.
There's no questions in the chat because Paul's been answering them with Sam all the way through. I mean, anyone's very free and welcome to unmute and put questions to Miles or Paul right now whilst the slides are shifting back.
Just whilst we're waiting for it to come through, there's just two things that I just want to add. This is a great way to block the competition out. So, don't ever lose sight of that. And again, I'll give you an example. One of the customers I work with, she'd been her customer had been pestered by other agencies, one of the major competitors, and the customer actually turned around to the other agency and said, "I can't use you at the moment because I've got a subscription model with one of your competitors, the people that we're working with." This isn't just necessarily about doing retained work or asking for exclusivity. This is about trying to develop a service that is flexible around customers. Whether you call it recruitment on demand, recruitment as a service, this is about trying to think differently rather than just taking orders. And this is where sometimes as recruiters we struggle because we go back to being a recruiter. So, I'm going to put my own neck on the block here. Gary's in the on here. I've been doing a bit of work with Gary around this. Hear firsthand from somebody who, for the first time ever, is having different conversations with his customers. I don't know whether I'm going to regret asking you to comment, Gary, or not. But...
Yeah, you're going to regret it, Paul. No, absolutely right. We tackled this back end of last year and spent 4 months building this product offering and launched it in January of this year, as you said. And I called it traditional, no risk, committed, most popular, and then embedded, best value, and also call it recruitment as a service, as you used the phrase before. And I signed up a client I've been using for a number of years, in fact, many years, but he gave me 8 vacancies, and we spread the deal over a 12-month period so that I get his 8 vacancies and I get the fee, and he gets additional services from me and the ability to manage his budgets, go to his FD, and his FDs are all over this stuff where they go, oh, right, okay, so we get reduced fees, we get it per month, and we get all these additional services. It falls into the no-brainer category. And then obviously it's then about the delivery and the after service. So I do the 1, 2, and 3 month aftercare with the candidates and a lot of other additional services. And then I've got referrals from within the business since then, and I've signed up a second client who's doing the same thing, who only had 1 vacancy. And then when I showed him my product offering, he looked at that one, and I said, well, he can't have that for 1. So he said, all right, then I'll have 3. And he just made up 2 vacancies on the spot. He said, I'm not going to lose 2 staff, so I'll sign up for 3. So we worked out the fee for 3. He signed up. I've only got 1 live vacancy, which we're filling, but he's already paid for, signed up for 3. Hope that helps.
That's great. By the way, we're not paying Gary for any of that either. That's all honest feedback.
Gary, I've got a question for you. So, you know, I see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recruitment agencies monthly, and most of them say, like almost exclusively, they'll say on their website or their LinkedIn page, I'm different. We're different, right? But this is clearly something different. So what was that kind of switch in your mind that made you believe in this and then take it to market? And the kind of secondary question is, like, how was it received when you did it the first time?
So I'll answer the second question first. Was I drip fed it into my client. So I told them that we're exploring these ideas of delivering services, and I gave them an overview of what I thought it was going to look like, as per conversation that I had with Paul about exploring it. And he said, it sounds really great. We're going to have a lot of recruitment in the early part of next year. Keep me posted and give me details. So that gave me the encouragement to go off and do it. And then Paul and I benchmarked it. We wrote down, I think I had about 7 or 8 versions of trying to design it, because my design artist couldn't get his head around what I was trying to do. So visually as well as verbally, we were trying to describe it. And then eventually, after a lot of to and fro, and visually, we got it on the website, and visually we got it into a document, so that when I get inquiries now, I can send them. It's like a menu now. It's like ringing a restaurant and saying, I want to book a table, and you expect to send you a menu. I use it in a bit like in that kind of way to pigeon, to sort of give them 3 options. How important a customer do you want to be? What level of service do you want to have? So fairly reasonably good response. I mean, in reverse of that, I went to see a customer that I'd not done well with for a few months, and showed it to him, and he wasn't prepared to pay me retainer up front. So he wasn't prepared to pay me the middle one, which is almost a deposit of £1,000 up front and then the balance. But equally, he was prepared, as he has done before, to work with me on an exclusive basis. So it's not the magic stick. It doesn't work for everyone, but it makes you different, Andy. That's for sure. It makes you stand out, makes you look different, and makes you look more professional in terms of you've got different delivery services, and they always want the best, really, don't they?
Always. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Gary. There's another question for you, Miles and Paul, from Joe Watson. So Joe's asking, I wondered about the financials and the sort of percentages in deposits, in brackets, for committed projects, or pricing resubscriptions anyone has experienced, please.
Look, well, let me just share something with you, Joe, and thank you for the question. I refer back to what I mentioned earlier around the product design and development. The pricing model needs to be specific to your customers as well. So what we've seen in practice is sometimes, and let's just talk about this committed model, where effectively it's a project fee up front, relatively small, and then the rest based on success at the back end. So it's a halfway house between contingent and retained. Let's just call it that for argument's sake. So I've seen an instance where a client has got it slightly wrong because they were a bit nervous. So they got a bit twitchy and were scared, if I'm honest with you, to go too deep too soon. And they pitched in with that upfront fee, and it was too low a level. And what happened there was the commitment level wasn't right. It didn't mean that much to the clients. So the product didn't work. They had to bizarrely, after 2 months of failure, actually increase threefold. They wanted to go in 500 up front. They finally went in at 1,500 up front. And all of a sudden it started to work. The stickiness was there. The commitment was there. So you need to, again, this is part of that market testing process, is you need to be going and having that honest conversation with your clients when you're market testing, in terms of, if we priced it this way, how would that make you feel? If we did it that way, how would you, and so on and so forth. Because just because something works there geographically or sector doesn't mean it's going to work over there. So it's about your customers. But classically, in terms of a committed product, it's exactly that. It's project free, which is a proportion of the fee up front, remainder on sort of success. But it's getting that upfront fee that's so important. Get that wrong, product doesn't work.
I've done it before, and with some limited success. And then, like Gary, I had a conversation on Monday about looking at more of an embedded model.
Yeah.
And doing the workforce planning and all that stuff as well. So that's why he said, go away, put something together and send it to me. And like Gary, that's where I'm like,
I can feel Gary's going to become an associate of NorthStar people at this rate.
I'll share mine with you, Joe. It's not a secret. I honestly don't mind. I'll share what I've got with you. In fact, if you go on my website, it's there.
Yeah.
It's not even if you go on my website, you'll find it.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the interesting point you just made there, Gary, is really pertinent. Most of the other clients that we've done this with have been happy and confident enough to actually put it out there in the public domain. I mean, I was nervous as hell with one agency that did a big push on this subscription model, and literally led with the recruitment as low as X, because that was the market they were in. And we knew that, and they knew their market, and they knew that was going to be the big buying point. And they had clients piling into their launch webinar as a result of them going out there, really ballsy, and saying, we can do recruitment for you in this way at this level, all based around this subscription model and volume. So I think it is a challenge to find that right thing, and don't be shy if it isn't quite working to pivot and adjust it. But the market testing piece and engaging with your marketplace and your warm, friendly clients, your known and trusted clients, be open, honest with them. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. These are our options we're thinking of. What do you think about that? Honestly, clients love being involved in this, and it's amazing how many of those clients that you involve in that testing process become the early adopters of the new products as well. Just is.
Just to add, Miles, one point, this is about converting 36p in the pound into profit, not 18p.
Good point. Is that okay, Joe? Does that sort of give you enough?
Yeah, that's a big help, Miles. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Like I say, I've tried these things, but very much along the way of your thinking. I'm too good at what I do to do contingency recruitment anymore. I'm just not doing it anymore.
Good for you. Absolutely. Cool. Have we got anybody else want to jump in?
I can give you an example of when we've converted a contingent client into an engagement client, and they were really resistant to it because they're a small tech startup. They only had so much funding, etc. And we just, we're really honest with them and said, look, you're a small company, we're a small business. We can't work for free. Cash flow is king for us, and there's lots of benefits to this. They'd used us before, and they'd used us exclusively before. This time we were just asking them for a retainer. And we did a great job for them. We charge 20% of our fee up front. That's the rule of thumb, roughly, for our engagement fee. And we got to final stage. We had a candidate who were waiting to make an offer. And then the CTO had one of his previous employees from a different company approach him, and they gave the job to the other guy, even though we were literally waiting for an offer for our candidate. And they're like, yeah, better the devil, sort of thing. And at the end of it, we had a cancellation fee at that point because we'd gone way through the whole process. And the client was happy. They were like, do you know what, Sam, you guys have earned it. and we will definitely come back to you again. And it was just because this situation arose, and I was like, this is why we have to, because on our old model, we'd have done all that work for nothing. And so I think even though it didn't work out for us in terms of the final fee, they still, it's proved a point to them and the reason why we have to do what we do.
Love it.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear. And as I said earlier, I think, there will always be a part for contingent recruitment, because sometimes there's new clients out there. So we've got to win trust. We've got to build that relationship, but we've got to think. And if we've got a product suite, we can position product suites quite early in our relationship and hopefully start just moving clients along. Not everybody's going to go to the extreme, because that's not relevant for everybody. And Gary made the point earlier, you're not going to get all clients falling over themselves into these other products and services. But if you can get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% of your business over the next 2 years in and away from that contingent space and into these more value-adding services, it's just that resilience it's gonna give you going forward. And I think it makes your jobs down. It makes it more interesting, doesn't it? I mean, just that relentlessness of contingent recruitment is just hideous beyond belief for so many people at the moment. It is woeful. I mean, I've seen people on their bloody knees, literally on their knees, almost crying, just, I can't do this anymore. This is killing me. And literally at a loss, and I think, again, sometimes we just got to be brave, haven't we? And get out of our comfort zones and say, right, we're going to do this. And I just really appreciate Joe, Gary, and Sam, you sharing your own experiences, because, Paul and I can bang on all day long about this sort of stuff, but it's brilliant to just hear it from you guys, because it's not just us talking the rhetoric. It's you saying, yeah, look, we're team members, we're doing this, it works. So really appreciate you sharing that today.
Cool. I think we draw to a close now, simply because if anyone saw my post that went viral on LinkedIn about complaining about Sky, the guy's been downstairs for the last 15 minutes while I'm glitching out testing my Wi-Fi. So I'm gonna have to go, because my wife and my dog probably hear the dog barking. It's going crazy down there. But that was such an important session. I'm going to make sure that lots of other people get to see this as well, Miles and Paul. But please, everyone, connect with them. What are you going to send out afterwards, both you two?
Okay, well, obviously this is going to get posted on the hub. What I will do is provide a follow-up. I'll send it over to it's Janisha, isn't it, who's the marketing lady we've now got in team. So we'll make sure that we follow it up with. I'll send some more details around this approach for productization. I think that'd be a good thing to do. So I'll share much more detail around the processes you need to deploy to go through and develop your products and services and solutions. Gives much more narrative. So that'd be really helpful for anybody that wants to do it on their own.
And if you want to meet up with Miles, I don't know if Paul's doing both as well, but Miles is going to be at the Northeast and Northwest meetings next week. So Northwest 2 to 5 p.m, Hale, Cheshire, and then the Northeast is at Selby. Forget the name of the hotel again.
It's Weatherby, isn't it?
Weatherby, sorry. Weatherby, the Bridge Hotel, with Ben Lyons next week. So he'll be at both of those. Yeah. There's already like 50 members booked into them. So these events look like they're going to be bigger than, like, following suite with the rest of the regions. It's going to be really, really popular. So I'm sure we could even have a breakout table at both of those with Miles as well, if you're all interested, if you're going to come along. So
sounds like a plan. Brilliant.
Thanks again, everyone.